It's one of the biggest mistakes you can make in fantasy football, and I know there are a lot of you out there that are guilty of this because I see it in the comment section almost every single year. Some player on your team last year popped off, a player that you didn't really expect to produce what they did, and now you have an unwarranted love for said player. And now because of that, you just want to draft him again here this year because you remember the good old days of last year. But can those players duplicate what they did in 2024? Or were they a one-hit wonder? That's why in today's show, we're talking 5 players and asking the question, can they do it again? That's right, just because a player did something in 2024 does not mean they're automatically going to do it once again in 2025. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but things change pretty rapidly here in the NFL offseason. They change quicker than a fantasy manager's mood on a Monday morning in season. And I know some of you are moody on Monday mornings. Now, being that this is coming out on a Monday, maybe some of you are moody out there right now, but I got something that can turn that frown upside down. Because it is the NFL offseason, and sometimes you just need a little bit of a fantasy hit to take the edge off. So head over to Underdog right now, create a new account if you don't already have one. Just use the referral code Headliners when you do so. You're going to get a free player pick'em and a chance at up to $1,000 in bonus funds. Now, after you do that, all you got to do is make your first initial deposit and then click the link in the description. I'm going to be waiting for you to draft. Now, if the draft is full by the time you get there, don't worry, I'm going to be doing this all off season long. So get signed up now and come be a degenerate with me here this offseason. All right, anyway, can these players do it again? That is the topic of the day. And let's go ahead and start off at the quarterback position and talk about a guy like Baker Mayfield. In 2024, Baker Mayfield was hashtag Bake Show for a ton of people. He finished the season as the overall quarterback 4. He outscored the likes of Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. He set career highs in completions, attempts, completion percentage, passing yards, rushing yards, passing touchdowns. He was selected to the Pro Bowl and finished 11th in the MVP voting. But not everything is exactly the same in 2025. Tampa Bay has a new offensive coordinator. Liam Cohen, he's gone to Jacksonville.
Duval.
Now, it's Josh Grizzard. He's a first-time offensive coordinator in the NFL, but he was the team's passing game coordinator just last season, so you have to think the offense is going to stay fairly consistent. But what about Chris Godwin? He was a huge key to success for Baker Mayfield early in 2024. Godwin in the slot was an absolute cheat code, but he's coming off a major injury with the ankle dislocation. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I do have a little bit of common sense. The fact that they brought back Chris Godwin this offseason on a 3-year, $66 million deal with $45 million guaranteed, it says that he's probably going to be okay. Now, I did ask Dr. Ethan here what he thought about Chris Godwin coming into 2025, and he does expect a dip in production, anywhere between 15 to 18%. And while I don't think that's ideal, I think Tampa Bay's got some other weapons that can really fill some of that void. We saw Cade Otton step up last season at the tight end position. He's still there. We know Mike Evans is still in town, but what about the late season standout Jalen McMillan? After the way he finished the 2024 season, you have to assume he's going to have a larger role in 2025. The dude had 7 touchdowns over the last 5 games of the season. So if Chris Godwin returns and isn't what he was pre-injury, at least we have Jalen McMillan, who's proven as a capable weapon in this offense. But honestly, there is one X factor here for me. Baker has not only 1, but 2 running backs that are capable of being a threat out of the backfield in the passing game. This is like the cherry on top. Bucky Irving and Rachaad White combined for 98 receptions, 785 receiving yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns in 2024. That right there is huge. It's like having another stud wide receiver on the roster. So if I'm being asked, can Baker Mayfield do it again? This is what I'm going to say, and I'm going to say it the only way that I know how to express myself, in an eggplant meter. And honestly, I'm giving it 4 out of 5 eggplants that he could definitely do it again. How about Chase Brown, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals? Can he do it again in 2025? Because he finished 2024 as the RB12 overall. Dude was a huge boost to fantasy teams last year. He caught everyone outside of Headliner Nation off guard. If you were here, you knew about him in the offseason and you drafted him. But he ended up with 1,350 total yards and 11 touchdowns on 283 touches. But is that repeatable in 2025? Well, they come into 2025 with the same offensive coordinator in Dan Pitcher. Higgins is back and just signed a massive deal alongside Jamar Chase. Mike Gesicki, he's back at the tight end position. The offensive line is intact, but they did bring in Samaje Perine. But he's nothing more than insurance. Do you remember how many people last year were worried about Zach Moss? Same thing here this year. Chase Brown, the cream will rise to the top here, and that is Chase Brown. But what I love the most is that Brown only had 283 touches. He's not a guy that needs 325 plus touches to have a great season, and he's highly involved in the passing game. He had 65 targets last year, and that definitely helps the RB's floor. If I see any issues with him in 2025, it's that people aren't going to be caught off guard anymore. It's early in the offseason, but as of right now, he is the current RB11 overall in the consensus rankings. So with that being the case, what he really needs to do is duplicate what he did last year just to return draft value this year. So can Chase Brown do that again? There is really nothing pointing to him not being able to, and the Bengals need cheap options right now with all the money they got tied up in their big three offensive weapons. If I threw the chances into the eggplant meter, I'm going with 3 out of 5 eggplants that he can do it again. The expectations are just so much higher this year. Now he has to produce and really can't give you that added boost that you got last year. But then we got a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie wide receiver last year from Jacksonville, and what a rookie year it was. He had 87 catches for 1,282 yards and 10 touchdowns, finished the season as the wide receiver 4 overall. He was arguably one of the best wide receivers down the stretch of the 2024 season and probably helped carry a lot of people to fantasy titles. But that's a great year for a bad team. Can he really do that again? Well, he's going to get his starting quarterback back. Remember, Trevor Lawrence missed 10 games in 2024, and Mac Jones was the starter when he was out. But there is a slight problem with that. Brian Thomas Jr. actually did better with Mac Jones than he did Trevor Lawrence. In the 9 games with Trevor Lawrence, he had a total of 35 catches, 595 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The last 7 games of the year with Mac Jones, he had 52 catches, 687 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That's 17 catches and 92 yards more with Mac Jones, and he did it in 1 less game. But it's not some big glaring concern to me. We also have to take into account that when he started the season with Trevor Lawrence, it was his very first NFL games. It took him a few weeks to really get going and be more consistent in that offense. But we also know that we now have a new head coach there in Liam Cohen, and he was a big part of the Baker breakout in Tampa Bay. He can't be any worse of a play caller than what we've seen in Jacksonville as of late either. How about Christian Kirk? He's gone now, he's in Houston. Tight end Evan Ingram soaked up a ton of targets in this offense. Well, now he's gone. He's in Denver. They got Gabe Davis, but he couldn't stay on the field to save his life. And the only other piece they've added so far this offseason is Dyami Brown, a solid role player, but not some alpha wide receiver that's going to kill the value of Brian Thomas Jr. The running game doesn't look much better here this year, and the Jacksonville defense allowed the 3rd most points to opponents in 2024, leading to them having to throw the ball a ton. So can Brian Thomas Jr. do it again in 2025? Well, there are some changes in Jacksonville this year, but given the fact that he got a better offensive coach and less competition for targets, if we pull up the eggplant meter, I got 4 out of 5 eggplants on Brian Thomas Jr. that he can do it again. Which will then bring us to Lad McConkey. McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers. Another rookie wide receiver last year that just killed it. He ended the year with 82 catches for 1,149 yards and 7 touchdowns. Finished the year as the wide receiver 12 overall. And you could really see in the second half of the season how he got comfortable in this offense. He ended the season with 7 straight games of at least 80 yards receiving or a touchdown. Then he blew up in the playoffs against Houston, where he had almost 200 yards receiving in just that one game. He quickly became the safety valve and the binky of Justin Herbert. The team has now upgraded their running game with Najee Harris. They've upgraded their offensive line by bringing in Mekhi Becton. Josh Palmer is gone, he's in Buffalo, and they've brought back Mike Williams. Now, there is literally nothing standing in the way of Ladd McConkey when it comes to having a larger role in this offense once again in 2025. The offense just isn't really going to change much. We know that Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball, and now with Najee Harris in the backfield, it's really going to draw defenders into the box. That's only going to help out Ladd McConkey. Now, he may not be a guy that racks up a ton of 100-yard games all season long, but he may be one of the safer wide receivers in fantasy football this year. If you take what he did over the last 7 games of the season last year and projected it over a 17-game full season, it would be 102 catches and 1,598 yards. 1,500 yards for Ladd McConkey. Now, while I think those numbers are probably a little bit high, it still answers the question for us. Can he do it again in 2025? Abso-freaking-lutely he can. Bring up the eggplant meter. Make it explode. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 eggplants here because I love myself some McConkadonk-badonk-donk. But because we're classy, we're ending it with a tight end. The football kind. Of course, we're talking Jonnu Smith of the Miami Dolphins, the tight end that no one expected in 2024. He finished the year with 883 total yards and 8 touchdowns. Finished the year as the tight end 4 overall in fantasy football. One of the more consistent weekly weapons in Miami last year as well, but can he do it again? It may be tough for him here in 2025. Don't forget, Tua missed 6 games last season, Waddle missed a couple games, and Tyreek Hill was playing the majority of the season hurt. It was a perfect storm for Jonnu Smith to erupt in 2024. But now Tyreek Hill is back, he's healthy, he seems motivated. At least that's what the short hair seems to represent. Jalen Waddle, he's going to come into the season healthy, and then they just brought in wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine from Tennessee, and that right there may kill some of the Jonnu Smith touchdown opportunity. Last year when Tua went down, they went to the likes of Skylar Thompson or Tyler Huntley. This year, those guys are gone. It would be Zach Wilson if Tua goes down. Do we really want to put a lot of trust into Zach Wilson? It's just not a situation right now that I can look at with Jonnu Smith and pretty much say, hey, you know what? Everything is aligned for this to happen again in 2025. So given the current situation, do I think that Jonnu Smith can finish as a top 4 tight end in fantasy football in 2025? The eggplant isn't very happy here. If I'm being completely honest, it's not completely flaccid, but I'm only giving it 2 out of 5 eggplants that Jonnu Smith can repeat what he did in 2024 here in 2025. So there you have 5 guys that we asked the question, can they do it again in 2025? Be sure to look at the entire picture when you're evaluating players. Don't just look at the final box score or their final point total at the end of the season. What led to them having that season? Do things look similar this year? And if so, yeah, they probably should be on your draft board. Now, if you're the type of guy that's like, Jake, I don't want to do that much research. That's way too time consuming. Don't worry. Your boy got you covered. Just hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and we will give you every piece of information that you need to be successful in fantasy football here in 2025. Now, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button because it definitely helps us out here on YouTube, but I'm going to go ahead and get out of here today. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and then most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.